We have a lot of news and notes to go over today, most notably a report that the Tigers did offer Tarik Skubal a contract extension. We'll talk about that and more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome all. We have a lot to go over today. There have been a lot of really small reports that can kind of fill up an entire show here, just worth of talking points. We're going to talk about award finalists for the MLB, obviously, that were announced on Monday afternoon. A couple of Tigers in there, not surprising. Definitely not for one of them, obviously being Tarik Skubal. But we'll talk about Manager of the Year as well, which finds a certain Tigers manager trying to be sneaky about it. There's only one of those currently, at least. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We are going to start off by talking about Tarik Skubal and a report that Evan Petzold had where the Tigers did, in fact, offer him a contract extension. But we're going to talk Arizona Fall League. We're going to talk about some Scott Harris comments from GM meetings. We're going to talk about a report that Bregman and the Astros and what's going on there. We have a lot to go over. Let's start off with this Tarik Skubal conversation. So this got a very negative reaction, I think is fair to say, amongst the fan base on Monday. And Evan Petzold of the Freep, we shout out Evan pretty much every day at this point, I feel like, on this show. Fantastic guy, fantastic beat writer, and go check out the articles that he wrote involved with and surrounding with this topic if you want a more in-depth and you want some quotes from people inside the organization. But within that update, he mentioned that the Tigers did, in fact, offer Tarik Skubal a contract extension. Now, the reply from Scott Boras was, quote, "It wasn't a competitive offer." That is a quote from the article, not from Scott Boras himself. But Evan Petzold describes the offer as not competitive. And he also mentions how a short-term deal obviously is not going to do it. That kind of goes without saying, but then brings up his potential market value when he becomes a free agent in 2 years and mentions that it could be, if he stays healthy, between $30 and $40 million a year and 8 to 10 years long. He'll be, I believe, 29 when he enters free agency. He's 27 right now. He's a free agent, not after 2025, but following the 2026 season. So, like I said, this got a very negative reaction amongst the fan base. I did not take it as negative, but I also think that there is justification for the negative response. My thought is this. One, for starters here, every single first offer has been declined in like the history of contract extensions in the game of baseball. Okay. In other sports, you know, you offer, like in basketball, there's a max contract. So like once you get there, there's really no much other negotiating. Like you just there's a max contract, right? Salary cap sports are a little bit different. With baseball, with only theoretical limits and not actual limits to what you can spend, higher taxed limits, higher tax brackets, but not an actual limit on anything. The first, unless, which also doesn't happen, unless one of the parties goes, hey, if you can give us this, we'll accept on the spot. All first offers, for the most part, pretty much entirely, though, are declined. So I don't have a huge issue with the Tigers throwing a number out there, seeing if it would stick, and then it gets declined, okay. As long as they're not so disrespectful with their number that they're like literally tarnishing the relationship between player and organization, which if we ever find out that that is the case, obviously I am massively against that. But okay, the first offer was rejected. I don't really care. I really don't. Now, there's two angles to this. There is the Scott Harris angle to this, which is similar to what I just laid out. And then there's the ownership angle to this. And I think that those are two very different lines in the sand, two very different lines of thought, and two very different paths to direct your frustration. Okay, so when it comes to Scott Harris, of course you're going to start lower, right? Especially if Chris Ilitch gives him a budget and says, you're not allowed to spend more than X million dollars in any given winter, then yeah, of course he's going to start low, especially for a guy that still has 2 seasons of team control left and a pretty riddled injury history. Okay, this is not me, for the record, this is not me giving you reasons why we shouldn't extend Tarik Skubal. That should be a very high priority for the Detroit Tigers. I want to make that abundantly clear before I have to read comments about how I'm like saying that we shouldn't do that. We should. Okay, that he is the best player on the team. He's the best player in the organization. He's a building block. He's a franchise player. He's going to win Cy Young unanimously. Okay. That doesn't mean that you just go, okay, well, I'm going to use my entire budget for the next 3 winters on one guy that plays once every 5 days and has been injured a lot in his career. This was his first full season. So I have zero issue with the front office's mindset towards this. Now, on the flip side, where I do think anger is more directed towards, I don't think very many people are like, wow, Scott Harris is an idiot for this. I think most people's frustration is directed towards Chris Ilitch. That I'm not going to get in the way of. And I completely understand. I think it's completely justifiable. And I really don't have too much else to say about it. If your mindset is why would we not just pony up and pay the dude what he is worth and then also spend more money this winter on top of that, I don't know. I don't have a rebuttal for that. And that is something that I have been saying on this show for 3.5 years now. And I've been saying off this show for almost 10 years now. If the Detroit Tigers lose Tarik Skubal in 2 years, and it is because ownership would not pay him what he is worth, sell the team, man. Like, this is, and that's way jumping ahead here, okay, admittedly. But there is zero, I want to make this abundantly clear, zero justification for ownership to not extend Tarik Skubal when he is eligible to be a free agent. I'd love to get one done tomorrow. I'd love to. But the reality of this situation is that Tarik Skubal is a Scott Boras client. He pretty much never, ever accepts contract extensions because he plays the open market. So unless you are ready to significantly overpay, he's probably going to be here for the next 2 years. I'd imagine contract extensions will pick up a little more after next year. And then if nothing gets done, he's probably going to come close to hitting the free agent market, at least, if not hitting it. And I'm hoping the Tigers will be in the mix for that. This is again 2 years from now. Like, this is a way down the road problem. It doesn't have to be a problem, is where my frustration lies. If this ownership group just allocated resources to players on the roster, the actual payroll of the team, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation, right? we'd all be listening at home. We'd be like, all right, well, you know, they didn't get one done right now, but like, who cares? Everyone, I feel like a lot more people would kind of feel how I do about the initial rejection and just be like, all right, like, yeah, it's a first offer. So what? We'll get it done, right? There's a lot more confidence that comes with ownership that actually pays people, pays players, I should say. So all of that is to say that I am not losing sleep over this right now. They have plenty of time to work something out. Scott Boras also notoriously doesn't sign extensions, so I'm not sure it's all the Tigers' fault necessarily if he does go to free agency. I think the Tigers will continue to try and extend objectively their best player. I think it would be ridiculous for them not to, so I have full faith and confidence that the organization at a minimum is going to keep trying to extend him. Success or not, only time will tell. And I think the biggest thing is just, what is ownership willing to do? What are they willing to pay up? And that is a question that only the next 24 months will be able to answer. Okay. Let's keep the ball rolling here. Got a lot more to talk about still. All right. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's a lot of great features over at Game Time as well. Again, Game Time Picks uses curation and makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. If it needs a ticket, odds are pretty good that you can get a deal over at Game Time. They have all-in pricing, so you can see your total price up front. There's no hidden fees at checkout or anything like that. You just get the complete total up front. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. I'm currently planning on trying to be back tomorrow. If I do miss tomorrow, then we will certainly be back the following day and the rest of the week. Business as usual. Just got a lot of family stuff going on Tuesday. So 50-50 kind of in the air right now. We'll see how the day plays out. But if we are not back tomorrow, we will certainly, like I said, be back the remainder of the week. So talked about Tarik Skubal, talked about that contract extension that was offered and was nowhere close. Again, as long as it's not an offensive, like, oh, you ever played FIFA and you're trying to negotiate a transfer fee and you just lowball somebody so bad that they storm out of the room and you just can't get that player anymore? As long as that isn't happening, then I'm okay. Then I think I'll live with just a first offer being rejected. But we'll see how it unfolds over the next 2 years. The Arizona Fall League is not over, but it is close to ending. Only a few games left there. And so we're going to do, we'll do more of another roundup when the AFL actually ends and talk, final thoughts from the Arizona Fall League. But I do want to give credit to the two stars at the top, but really just kind of talk about everybody that was in the Tigers organization that went to the AFL, because the All-Star game just happened and a lot of Tigers players are currently in the news for their great performances at the AFL. And so I want to jump on that boat while everybody else is still talking about it and while we're all thinking about it. So Thayron Lorenzo, obviously one of the two big names in the Tigers organization that is participating in the Arizona Fall League. In 14 games at the time of this recording, he has 1 home run, 11 walks, and 9 strikeouts, more walks than Ks. He's hitting 326 with a 463 OBP, a 581 slug, an OPS of over 1,000, and has shown notable improvements defensively. Now, is he a Gold Glover back there at this point? Still very much no, but a switch hitter that is taking strides in the right direction defensively behind the plate and is crushing the baseball is really awesome. Not to be outdone is the other big name Tigers prospect to come out of the Arizona Fall League, and that is Josue Briseño. In 21 games, Briseño has 8 home runs, is hitting 392, has a 465 OBP, a 797 slug. That would be a pretty solid OPS. Well, his OPS is over 1,200. It is 1,262. He has 20 RBIs in 21 games. Listed as a first baseman, which I think is noteworthy. He is destroying. He hit a home run. When was this? Within the last couple of days. That was hit so far that the cameraman lost it in the night, and it went like up the hill in right center field. He is, if there is any takeaway from the Arizona Fall League, it is Josue Briseño. Pretty comfortably, I think. And that's not to not give credit to Thayron Lorenzo, who's obviously a part of the Flaherty trade and has been fantastic since coming over to the organization, and is also an all-star. Lorenzo actually hit the game-winning home run in the All-Star game. We just have 2 absolute studs in the AFL right now, which is really exciting. The other players that the Tigers sent to the Arizona Fall League that have not been talked about nearly as much as those two. A lot of pitchers, and then a shortstop that's been playing some left field as well. Right-handed pitcher Tarik Skubal, right-handed pitcher Rainer Castillo, right-handed pitcher Wilmer Flores. We'll talk about him in a second. CJ Waynes, also a right-handed pitcher. Lefty pitcher Jake Miller, and then shortstop Peyton Graham, who was the second-round pick a few years ago of the Tigers, but has been playing outfield mostly in the AFL. We'll start with him because we're already talking about him. Been playing some outfield, hasn't been hitting well. That's been the big knock on him for most of his professional career. He's athletic, he has some tools, but just can't seem to hit well enough to really advance throughout the system. Not hitting very well in the AFL. Jake Miller has a 9.42 ERA in 14 innings pitched. That's low-end prospect, so we'll see if maybe he can make some adjustments and have a solid campaign this upcoming year. CJ Wayne, similar conversation. Rainer Castillo, similar conversation. 8.56 ERA in 15 innings. Tarik Skubal, I like. 5.4 ERA in 10 innings. Really can spin the thing. Have liked watching him pitch. So we'll see what happens in the rest of the AFL, and then obviously what happens next year in the spring. Wilmer Flores has not pitched in the AFL, despite being one of the Tigers players who was invited and was sent to the Arizona Fall League. He's had some injury concerns this year, so it's not super surprising to me that they're not adding on a ton of innings for him. Wilmer Flores. So 2 years ago, he was the man and was flying through the system and was this, undrafted domestic free agent. That doesn't happen very often. Now, it was in the 2020 draft, so there's only 5 rounds, which is why if there ever was a draft class where a good undrafted free agent was going to come out of, it was going to be that one. And really just made a name for himself by being a flamethrower, was a starting pitcher, had the long hair, right? Brother plays in the league and has the same name. There was a lot of, everybody was talking about him. And then last year, 3 years ago, he flew through. 2 years ago, he kind of plateaued a little bit. And then last year was a really weird season. 2024 was a really weird season where in spring, he actually got off to a pretty, he looked really encouraging because they moved him to the bullpen. And I said, just throw as hard as you can. And he was pumping a hundo in spring training. We were like, okay, like Wilmer Flores might be in the majors. This dude might be in the bullpen at the major league level this year. Multiple inning guy that can throw gas. Just didn't really figure it out. And again, a lot of injury stuff over the last few years as well. On top of that, which certainly hasn't helped his development, but just an interesting kind of up and down road for him. And I am interested in how he looks going into spring training this year, because I don't think like the clock is ticking. Like he's still very young, but I think that this organization is going to need to see some potential to be a reliever this upcoming season in a full year. Hopefully he stays healthy. And if they don't get that, I think next winter, maybe we're talking about pulling the plug on the Wilmer Flores experience, as exciting as it started off being. So that'll be an interesting player to kind of keep an eye on in spring training. We'll obviously talk about that a lot more, but the big stars again are obviously Lorenzo and Briseño. Arizona Fall League, like, I mean, there are players that have dominated the AFL and ended up not being like great. There are players that have struggled and ended up being good. Like, it's not a pure, oh, look, they're crushing the Arizona Fall League, so that means they're ready to like be all-stars at the major league level. Like, it's kind of like spring training and preseason in other sports. It's like, all right, like summer league for basketball, right? Like, you gotta take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But it is really encouraging to see two of the more hyped hitting prospects this organization has to offer absolutely show out and crush the baseball is just really, really exciting. And I think spring training, I'll tell you what, I expect both of these guys to be in major league spring training. That doesn't mean they're going to be on the 40-man roster. That doesn't mean they're going to make the team out of camp. There is a 0% chance that happens. I want to make that abundantly clear. But are you warming up with the minor leaguers or are you warming up with the major leaguers? Are you going to the practice fields with the guys in single A, or are you going to the practice fields with Tarik Skubal and Riley Green? I really think they're going to be in major league camp, at least to start off. And they might get, told that they're not going to make the roster day one, right? That's what happened with Ty Madden and Jackson Jobe in 2024, right? They were in major league camp, but they were told that they weren't going to make the roster the second they got there. Maybe that happens with them, but I think they're going to be in major league camp. Really exciting stuff. We will obviously talk much more about them when the AFL ends and then throughout the winter, and we'll talk kind of long-term plans where they slide into everything, because if Briseño can stick at first base, that seat gets a little hotter for a few individuals in the Tigers organization. Let's talk about some news and notes to come out of GM meetings and then awards. Okay, we will do that right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always. So one small report that was in this same article by Evan Petzold that I'm going to keep reiterating is where all this information is coming from, because you should go click on and read his stuff, is that Alex Bregman is going to be the Astros' #1 priority this winter. How bad do you want him? And I'm not asking the Tigers organization. I'm asking you. I'm asking the listener. How bad do you want Bregman? How big of a priority is that for you? Because it sounds like the Astros are going to give him a ton of money. And he would make this team instantly better. This is not a blank check player to me, though. Right? Tarik Skubal is a lot closer to a blank check player than Alex Bregman is to me. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like there's a limit. I'm not giving Alex Bregman $300 million, I guess is my point. So how bad do you want him? Because if there's another team where he is their number one priority, then he's probably not going to be very cheap. There's also been some rumblings about Jake Berger potentially being a trade piece. We'll go through. We already went through a few of the trade options at third base earlier in the offseason. We'll go through plenty more of those as the winter continues to unfold. But that was an interesting one that I wanted to point out as well. Some quotes from Scott Harris that did not make too many people very happy. He mentioned finding players more similar to the, quote, one-year high-cost candidates. Now, Walker Buehler was mentioned in that scenario as a one-year high-cost candidate, even though yesterday we talked about him in terms of a two-year deal. But Harris had mentioned how there is no free agency for young players and how free agency is mostly filled with dudes that are around 30 because that's how baseball works, right? The 6 years of service time before you can become a major league free agent. I have faith that the pitching will be fine and that they can make a solid rotation doing that. That quote did not make me, in a vacuum, did not make me nearly as upset as it did a lot of other people. I have full faith in this coaching pitching department and just the organization's pitching development and pitching department as a whole. So I am really not like, oh, you need to get Blake Snell or else this offseason's a failure. No, that's ridiculous. And I think that, to be honest with you, if you're giving me the choice of use the money that Ilitch is willing to give Harris on a pitcher or on offense, I'm taking offense every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. So I'm pretty okay with the 1 and 2 year guys. Those have worked out outside of Maeda. Like, they have pretty much all worked out really well in the Harris era as far as pitchers go. So I have a lot of confidence in this organization's development and their plan with pitchers. I'm really okay with that, as long as, I want to make this very clear for the class, I am okay with it as long as it results in, and the cause and effect of not spending a ton of money on pitching is because you are spending money on offense. As long as that little caveat's thrown in there, as long as the resources are being used for other players on the offensive side of the ball, then I am okay with your 1 and 2 year deal reclamation projects. But you better bring in someone that can hit a baseball. Let's end on awards. AL Manager of the Year. AJ Hinch, Stephen Vogt, and Matt Quatraro are the 3 finalists for AL Manager of the Year. So I think Stephen Vogt's going to win it. I really do. But I actually think all 3 of these gentlemen have fantastic cases. And the thing about Manager of the Year is, and this is like what they don't want to tell you, okay? This is what the MLB doesn't want you to know. Manager of the Year is really just team that exceeded expectations the most, or like most improved team award is really. And we've been talking about that on this show for 4 years now. Like that's just kind of how the award has historically, like kind of how it's worked. So these 3 are the clear-cut exceeding expectation candidates in the American League. You have AJ Hinch, who ends a 9-season, 10-year playoff drought for Detroit, goes on the miracle, crazy run in the last 2 months of the season. You have Stephen Vogt, who took the Guardians to be one of the best records in baseball and took them to the ALCS. Got to remember, preseason expectations of Cleveland were not even close to that. And then, honestly, Kansas City might have the biggest case. If it's just most improved team, then it's going to go to Quatraro. Like that, they lost over 100 games. Like, they were dangerously close, like embarrassingly in the same ballpark as the Athletics in 2023, and then made the postseason this year. So I think all 3 of these guys have a legit case. I think it's going to go to Vogt, but if any of them win it, I honestly think it's pretty deserved. I think all three of them had really good years. I think Vogt's a heck of a manager. I really do. I was really impressed with how he managed that series against AJ, who I think is arguably the best manager in baseball. I really do think that all three of these guys could win it, and it wouldn't surprise me. The other award that a Tiger is up for, this is going to shock you, is American League Cy Young. Tarik Skubal, Emmanuel Clase, and Seth Lugo. I think that'll be the order I read it, is honestly the order it'll finish. My only question is, does he win it unanimously? I think he should. I don't think there's any debate or argument that between those three guys, who the best season is and who the best player of those three guys is. I don't think there's any debate. So I think he should win it unanimously. We'll end on this. AL Central supremacy, baby. Take all those jokes that everybody else has been throwing our way for the last decade about how awful the AL Central is and it's terrible and you guys suck and all your teams blow. I just listed 2 different awards where all 3 candidates reside in the American League Central. Heck yeah, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back again. I'm trying tomorrow, but it might be tricky. At worst, we will be back the day following. Okay? Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.